now invite our speakers. So I'm going to invite Jim Durrett up to introduce our speaker, Clyde Hicks.
Thank you, President Kathy. A little history. In the summer of 2005, Mayor Shirley Franklin had this to say about the Atlanta Beltline. We can define the kind of community we will be in 20, 30, 40 years. Green space, walkability, transit, new in-town development. It will, with its full implementation, take us to the next level of great American cities. A decade or more before that, the venerable city of Atlanta historian Franklin Garrett conducted dining car tours on a train owned by the state of Georgia along the Circle Line, the underused rail corridor that circled Atlanta's core, what we now know as the Beltline. In 1991, the Rails to Trails Conservancy proposed the idea of converting the corridor into a ring of multi-use trails. In the early 90s, a visionary City of Atlanta urban planner, Allison Whidden, promoted the development of a cultural ring of trails and parks in the run-up to the Centennial Olympic Games. This idea was incorporated into the city's 1993 Parks, Open Space, and Greenway Trails Plan. And by the way, Allison later proposed the creation of a Beltline tax allocation district in order to help pay for the conversion of the rail corridor into what we're talking about today. Ryan Gravel's 1999 Georgia Tech master's thesis emphasized fixed rail transit in the corridor. With the help of others, he then incorporated earlier ideas about trails and parks into his suggestion for fixed rail transit. Kathy Woolard, then City Council President, was an enthusiastic supporter of the idea. The Trust for Public Land, then led by our fellow Atlanta Rotary Club member Jim Langford, engaged urban planner Alex Garvin of Yale University to study the idea. And in 2004, the Beltline Emerald Necklace Report was published, which suggested that trails and parks, collectively greenways, affordable housing, and zoning changes should be prioritized before transit should be tackled. Under Mayor Shirley Franklin's leadership, the Atlanta Development Authority, now called Invest Atlanta, prepared the Beltline redevelopment plan, which the Atlanta City Council approved in 2005. This plan adopted those priorities I previously mentioned. An important development at this time was the sale of property previously acquired from Norfolk Southern Railroad by Wayne Mason, who's with us today, to the city of Atlanta. Wayne is a guest of his son, our Atlanta Rotary Club member, Keith Mason. Atlanta Beltline, Inc. had been formed by this time, and its first leader, Terry Montague, is here with us today. Brian Leary and Paul Morris followed Terry. They were then followed by our fellow Atlanta Rotary Club member, Brian McGowan. I'm fortunate to be able to call each of them friend. In 2015, Clyde Higgs was recruited to Atlanta from North Carolina to serve as Chief Operating Officer of Atlanta Beltline, Inc. I got to know Clyde when one hot day we hopped on our bicycles and rode around the entire very incomplete Beltline. When Brian McGowan temporarily left us for Seattle in 2018, Clyde then was named interim Chief Executive Officer. And then he shed the interim part of his title in early 2019, and he has continued to lead Atlanta Beltline to this day. In fact, this month, this being the last day of this month, marked Clyde's 10th anniversary at the Beltline, first as COO and then for 7 years as CEO. Please help me welcome to the stage our fellow Atlanta Rotary Club member and my friend Clyde Higgs, who will share some of the rest of the story before we sit down for a chat. Clyde?
So good afternoon, everyone. And I'm just going to break protocol here for a moment. He doesn't know that I'm going to do this, but we all read the announcement this summer that one of our fearless leaders here in Atlanta is retiring. And so I know we're here to talk about the Atlanta Beltline, but can we give Jim Durrett a rousing round of applause for your service, Jim? Well done, well done, well done. Yeah, and I had a whole speech, planned for you all, formal remarks, but I'm telling you, sitting at this table, I got chills, truly. Talking to Jim, talking to Zach about one of his favorite stories about the Beltline, he was like, Clyde, the Beltline has truly transformed our city for the better. He was like, I went to this restaurant called Yeppa on the Beltline, and he said it was teeming with people out there. And he's just like, Clyde, do you know the type of joy that the Atlanta Beltline brings to our community? And I said, maybe, because I really don't read a whole lot of our press. Because if you do, I'll be all over the place. You read the good, you read the bad. I really don't read it. And so to get that type of feedback is fantastic. So Zach, I appreciate that. President Kathy, thank you for your leadership, your counsel as well that you give to me. And then also I want to make sure that I recognize the Masons as well, in particular Wayne Mason. There would be no East Side Trail, no completed Beltline without Wayne Mason and his family deciding to make that key sale to the city. So can we give Wayne Mason a round of applause? Yes. And Jim, definitely appreciate your early efforts in working with Alex on the whole loop. And my good friend here, Rob Bronner, who heads up a lot of our fundraising efforts for the Beltline. My good friend, Brian McGowan, who was recognized earlier, who was my predecessor. And boy, we used to talk often. Even when he was in Seattle, we used to talk a lot. Terry Montague as well. Terry, thank you for stepping into that fire seat. No one really believed in the Beltline, right? In those early days, like, what? What are you trying to develop a rails to trails in the city of Atlanta? People, let's be honest. This is our 20-year anniversary for Beltline, but we are a 20-year overnight success. People didn't really believe in the project in those early days. And so when I see slides like this up here, if you don't recognize these two statuesque, perhaps three statuesque people up here, our mayor, but that's also the king and queen of the Netherlands. So of all the places they could visit in the United States of America, guess where they wanted to come? The Beltline. So that's King Willem, that is Queen Maxima, and they were so gracious. They walked, you can see Queen Maxima in her high heels. She literally walked at least a mile in those heels on the Beltline. And it was just a fantastic conversation and really asking us, and especially a place like the Netherlands, asking us how Atlanta made this project happen. And so they knew about two projects. They knew about the Beltline, and they knew about the High Line in New York City. Who's all been to the High Line in New York City? Oh, okay. Anytime I ask that question, I get a little bit jealous because I feel like you all are cheating on Atlanta a little bit, but that's okay. And there's a story that I like to share about the High Line, and hopefully this brings this next slide to life. So my good friend, his name is Robbie Hammond. Robbie is one of the founders of the High Line in New York City. And what he said is that ultimately the High Line was a failure. Was a failure. And what he really meant by that is that it is only a trail in the meatpacking district in Chelsea, and missing the opportunity to really make it an impactful community development project for that surrounding neighborhood. Now, did he really mean a failure? No, he didn't really mean it that way. What he really meant is they missed the opportunity to think about economic development impact, community development, and specifically affordable housing. And so I have to give a big shout out to the framers of the Beltline for thinking about us as more than a trail, thinking about housing affordability, thinking about economic impact, all those things that make a strong community. You gotta give the folks who thought about this project in the early days a lot of credit. And that's what Robbie said about Beltline. We're also ahead of our affordable housing goal. You saw that slide earlier, and Brian and I are both economic developers. I don't know if Eloisa is in the room either. I see my good friend Anna Roach. But think about this, gang. We've invested about $800 million into the Beltline to date. That's a big number. Jonathan, we had this conversation last week. But what we've seen is almost a $10 billion economic impact along the Beltline. And that's not a multiplier effect. That's actually investment in the ground. And so when you talk about return on investment for public dollars, you really can't beat the Beltline from that perspective. 26,000 jobs created along the Beltline. Another 45,000 plus construction jobs along the Atlanta Beltline. This is perhaps one of the most important economic development juggernauts in the country right now. We literally have cities across the country that come and visit us every week to see what the secret sauce is about this sidewalk that people walk on. But I want to stop and just go to the next slide and give you some feedback. This is what we describe as our Skittles map. Very colorful, but this is what we have done to date. Almost 13 miles of the 22-mile loop have been completed. And got to give a big shout out to our design and construction team. What you will see ahead of FIFA World Cup next year is literally 18 miles of continuous Beltline trail ahead of World Cup. And if you believe Dan Corso and other folks, a lot of those folks are going to be on the Beltline, not necessarily all the time at Mercedes-Benz, but they're going to be in Beltline communities. And so very excited about the work that we're doing here. And then just an interesting kind of a population shift. We love to show this slide, but right now about 20% of the entire population of the city of Atlanta lives in a Beltline neighborhood. And we all know that Atlanta is starting to densify again. We're gaining roughly about 1,000 additional people on a square mile basis. Anna Roach knows this. We're going to add almost 2 million people to Metro Atlanta in the next 25 years. A lot of those folks are going to live near the Beltline. It is quickly densifying. But what that's going to mean is that we're going to have a lot of stress on our infrastructure. We're going to need more trails. We're going to need more green space. We're going to have to think about transportation options on how to get around our city. And so one of the things that you will hear from the mayor very soon is this conversation about extending the TAD, our tax allocation district. That is the main funding source for the Beltline. If we really want to go from good, very good, to great, we're going to have to think about ways in funding some of these projects locally. Not necessarily from a federal perspective or other perspectives, but we're going to have to really think about what can Atlanta do to fund some of these major infrastructure projects. And so thank you for your attention. I look forward to having this conversation with my friend Jim. I hope I didn't make you emotional there, but thank you for your attention, and just know that 85% of the Beltline trail is going to be completed ahead of FIFA World Cup. Thank you very much.
When I was reading different articles in preparation for this, I came upon a 2016 New York Times story about the Atlanta Beltline, and the interesting thing was, this was the New York Times, and the headline said, "A glorified sidewalk." And you brought up the High Line, which I think is a glorified sidewalk, and the Beltline is anything but that. Clyde, if you wouldn't mind, let's talk a little bit about something that every once in a while it pops up. It's important in Atlanta. And the term gentrification is used in a pejorative way. And I wonder if you can talk to gentrification really in opposition to displacement and what all of that means to you, because that is something, when an investment comes in, people are concerned about changes in the neighborhood.
No, that's a fair question. Thanks for that. And I'm also reminded by the New York Times article, it was a front page headline, and it said the Atlanta Beltline, a glorified sidewalk. But when you actually look at that article, it was very complimentary of what we're doing, to the comprehensive nature of what we're doing from an affordable housing perspective, job creation, future transit. So it was actually a very good article. But I will say the New York Times also wrote an article about us, it's probably a month or so ago. And it was, to me, felt like clickbait a little bit, but it said, the Atlanta Beltline, is there to connect communities, or did it gentrify them? Pretty harsh. But actually, when you read the article, it's not a bad article. And I'm often reminded about this conversation, Jim, because to me, if you go into communities that have been disinvested for a long time, Michael, you know this, you're in these communities as well, that feels like one of the most disrespectful words that you can say to a community, because they want a nice park, they want green space, they want a functioning sidewalk, lights, cameras, access to a grocery store. So I'm going to challenge you all, let's reimagine and perhaps put that word to the side, because it feels disrespectful. Because if you talk to Grandma, Uncle Tyrone, Aunt Betty, that's not how they describe it. So we're going to Pittsburgh, we're going to West End, they're telling us bring it. Why isn't it happening quicker? And so it feels kind of disingenuous when someone from New York comes and does an article on Beltline and uses the G word. And now I know what they really mean. They're really talking about displacement. But you can take action against displacement. That's a policy conversation. Gentrification, it's an amorphous blob of a word. Like, what do you, don't gentrify. What are you supposed to do? Dan, you were in the administration years ago. Like, what are you supposed to do? It just stuns you. Now, let's take action against displacement. We don't want to displace our long-term legacy residents, but that G word, I'm just not a big fan of.
Let's talk about housing, because that's part of your mandate. How are you doing to deliver? And we know this is important to the mayor. He said we want, 20,000 units of affordable housing either preserved or built. How are you doing?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And honestly, when I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina about 10 years ago and ended up as COO for the Beltline, and I really wondered why I moved to Atlanta, because we were in the middle of a firestorm of a conversation with regards to affordability. And the poster child, if you were to look up in the dictionary why Atlanta isn't affordable, guess who was blamed at that time? The Beltline. Now, was that fair? You can argue on both sides of that argument, but it was challenging. People would, all over across the country, would look at Atlanta and just point at the Beltline as the reason why it was becoming so affordable or unaffordable. And so we are focused on that. We have exceeded our affordable housing goals for the last 5 years in a row. And that's thanks to all of our partners that think about affordability, Invest Atlanta, Atlanta Housing, the city, and then also the mayor deserves a lot of the credit for the inclusionary zoning ordinance that requires developers to do affordability along the Atlanta Beltline. So our original goal was to do 5,600 units of affordable housing by the end of 2030, which is when the Beltline TAD is to sunset. We are on track to do over 7,000 units to date, so we're doing good.
But you're also on track to actually complete the trail part of the Beltline by 2030 as well, right?
We are, and just going back, and again, this is being my 10-year anniversary, been very reflective on kind of what's happened in the past, and I think I've shared this at the State of the Beltline, but whoever writes the next book about Atlanta and the Atlanta Beltline, 4 years ago, when the Special Service District was passed, it helped us to raise about $100 million for the Beltline. And then that led to a cascade effect of philanthropic partners coming in a significant way. So we've definitely put together the whole capital stack to finish the entire Beltline loop by 2030, which was a part, Terry, of the original promise.
I want to get to transit, but since you talked about the Special Service District, could you help us all understand about not only the Special Services District, SSD, but also the Tax Allocation District?
Yes, so the Tax Allocation District, as I mentioned earlier, is our main funding source. When I joined the Beltline in 2015, I think our annual budget was about $31 million. The budget that we just passed, our last fiscal year, was $250 million. It's growing. But the Special Service District, which developers, property owners came around and decided to tax themselves this additional millage, and that's what helped us to raise about $100 million. We bonded against that extra revenue, and now we are in hyperdrive. That's why you see a lot of green on that screen out there, is because of that Special Service District and also the philanthropic giving.
So transit. I listened to an interview, Rose Scott and the great Clyde Higgs, talking about what transit means on the Beltline. And I'd like for you to take this opportunity to share your perspective on transit's role on the Beltline and what transit means.
Yeah, that is honestly probably the hottest topic for Beltline right now is transit. And in particular, transit mode. And I'm not going to get super technical about what I mean by that, but you all feel it, you hear it. Most people in this room agree that we need transit options within the city. But I will tell you, it's not just a Beltline conversation. This is a regional conversation, Anna, for sure. But there's an argument. There are certain folks that believe, like, hey, the East Side Trail is just booming, just like Zach mentioned a little bit earlier. Why would you create a lot of disturbance on perhaps the most important, behind the airport, perhaps the most important economic development initiative in the city? Because if you do more construction, you're going to shut businesses down for years. People are going to have to be laid off, and this is going to have a cascade of effect there. There's another argument out there that, hey, light rail transit was always a part of the vision for the Beltline. And we need ways to get people around our community that don't have access to a vehicle. And let's be frank, not everyone is healthy enough to walk from West End all the way to the East Side Trail. And so when we talk about grandma or Uncle Ted, is Uncle Ted going to ride a bicycle for 8 miles to the east side when it's raining or when it's cold, when the weather is challenging? And so that's the real debate there. Now, for us, we believe that most reasonable people want a transit solution in the city of Atlanta and beyond. We have to double click into what that means. Does it mean light rail? Does it mean some type of autonomous vehicle? Does it mean Waymo? Does it mean scooters? And I will tell you, do not let anyone get you into a binary argument about transit. Is it light rail or is it an autonomous vehicle? And the real answer is that it's all of the above. We hired a consultant about a year ago to do a study for us, and that's what the study came back, is that transit is going through its own, I would call Moore's Law leap. It is changing so fast. And so the streetcar that you see in downtown Atlanta, that technology is antiquated. It's old. You don't even need overhead catenary wires anymore for light rail. The battery technology has advanced so much that you don't need the spider web, for those that want a technical term there. You don't need a car that big, that wide, that loud. And so that's the kind of discussion that we need to have as a community, Jim, is double clicking into what we mean by transit, but at the end of the day, it's going to be all of the above.
I'm going to call Gina out because when we were communicating about this program, she said, Jim, I live close to the East Side Beltline, and I got to tell you, it's dangerous out there. And what she was referring to is the consequence of a place being loved to death and people being out there walking and having those extendable dog leashes. I love dogs, I've got one, but I keep her close. And bicycles zipping by at 25 miles an hour, and electric bikes being used more and more, which I think is a good thing. But people don't understand how to behave. There's an etiquette that we need to adopt. And I don't know how you're going to educate or police or enforce behavior on the Beltline. So if I say that to you, what's your response?
Yes, that is probably every Monday, our inbox, our public email inbox is full of people saying, hey, I love the Beltline, but man, those scooters are irritating me. I love the Beltline, but those people riding their bikes are irritating me. I love the Beltline, but those people walking on the Beltline are irritating me. I love so it's this kind of argument, and I get it. Because so think about this, Terry. So we are seeing about 300,000 trips on the Beltline on a monthly basis. It's a lot of folks going back and forth on the East Side Trail, and it is crowded. It's a lot of joy out there, but it's crowded. And sometimes you see bad behavior, people trying to ride a bike 40 miles an hour, or the unfortunate leash, walking your dog and you got a 6-foot leash. One of the things that we have recently stood up to address that is an etiquette campaign. And just telling people, really be courteous and don't be a jerk to your neighbor. Because at the end of the day, you can legislate, you can tell, you can talk, but people have to have personal responsibility on the corridor. But we stood up about a month and a half ago, something called the Beltline Ambassadors Force. And so these are the women and men, you'll see them in their khaki shorts, their green shirts, and they're really there to be courtesy officers. And if you're doing something inappropriate, then they will stop you, have a conversation, and really just explain the rules. And if something is happening that's of significant, then ultimately they can call APD, which has the responsibility to cover kind of that bad behavior on the Beltline at the end of the day. But lots of good feedback about it so far. I think they're doing a good job. but we're going to have a whole push ahead of FIFA World Cup to make sure that people understand those etiquette rules for Beltline. Because I hear it all the time, and I can smell it a mile away. Like, hey, Clyde, I was on the Beltline this weekend, and I had a good time. It was great. Then the conjunction comes in. But, I saw this scooter, or I saw this person, I saw someone trying to sell me. So that's one of the things that we need to address is just don't be a jerk. Be courteous to your neighbor, and we're going to continue to push that.
I just stepped off the MARTA board, and one of the things that we did when I was on the MARTA board is we brought Keith Parker to MARTA, and I remember the way he described the campaign for expectations of how you should behave was no knucklehead behavior, and that kind of resonates. It's sort of yeah, you can get behind that, and so maybe you can figure out what the next word is, or just use that one. We don't need knuckleheads on the Beltline. I
like that. I tried to use an expletive, but my team told me, Clyde, we can't say that to people, so, all right.
Before Kathy gets up here to yank the microphones away from us, let me ask this question, which I think everybody should ask our guest at the end of our time together. There's a big period ahead for us to get this thing finished, and not just finished in terms of the loop, but there's so much more to be done. And my question for you is, what would you like the members of the Atlanta Rotary Club to think about doing to support our efforts to make this complete and to make sure that Atlanta becomes what Shirley Franklin said that it will become?
No, that's a fair conclusion. So this is kind of our call to action. So we are going to finish the Beltline trail loop by 2030 like we originally promised. That will absolutely happen, but there's so much more work to be done. And so if you believe that trails, green space, housing, transit is important, and not just to Beltline neighborhoods, we need to have this conversation about extending all the TADs in the city of Atlanta. You're going to hear that from the mayor probably as early as tomorrow. And so that's one of the things that we need to get behind. We have the ability to raise, Jeff, over $6 billion for future infrastructure locally. So that's really our call to action, is really to make sure that we're talking to our elected officials at APS, at Fulton County, and also at the city of Atlanta. Those were the three bodies that ultimately vote on the extension of the TAD. Now, this is going to be a hard conversation. Easy to say, harder to do. But if we really want to do this the Atlanta way, we have to figure out on how to extend these TADs.
President Kathy, it's yours.
Thank you. Well, it's actually up to the membership now. Any Rotary member that'd like to come ask a question? And yeah, I had some in line about 20 minutes ago. Come up to the mic, please.
All right. Hey, Clyde, thanks for addressing the question of transit and encouraging folks to think of it in a multimodal sort of way. My question is, how do we reach that decision ultimately? What does that decision process look like? What are the steps that you foresee happening over the next several years to determine what, if any, transit options are developed along the Beltline?
Yep. Appreciate that question. And so it really, Atlanta Beltline is informing that information to the mayor's office, to MARTA, but really it's a triad conversation, obviously informed by the community. And that's kind of the process that we're going through right now. But transit is going to ultimately happen. But again, the big conversation is what is it going to look like? So the mayor, MARTA, Beltline are kind of the three bodies that are really pushing that decision, informed by community feedback. Yep.
Thanks, Clyde. Jim Langford, how are you?
Hey, Jim.
There was a time back in 2004, 5, and 6 where I did 83 three-hour tours of the Beltline.
Wow.
And Jim Durrett said, wait a minute, that sounds like the old
The 3-hour tour?
3-hour tour. Yeah, that's exactly what it was, but bus tours. And one of the things I used to say is that there's so many different lenses that you can look through when you look at the Beltline. Green space, recreation, affordable housing, private development, whatever those lenses are, it's going to be a success. And that was the reason that we had that great energy flow in that period, that we got the TAD, how we got the TAD passed, because people were looking at it that differently. The vote in the Atlanta City Council was 12-2. And the two people that voted against it were ones that didn't get all the things that they wanted because they wanted more things included in their neighborhoods. So my question to you is, how do we keep those lenses from being so competitive? I mean, they were so together, if you will, in that initial visioning process, and that gave us that great energy of the community. So how do we keep those lenses still with their energy, but without looking at it as a competitive process between those lenses that hurts us over time?
Right, Jim, that's a fair point. And it really is, again, that's our blessing and our curse, because we have so many constituencies that support us, being housing advocates, transit advocates, green space and trail advocates, development advocates. But that's, again, from my perspective, our superpower. So we need to make sure that all of those groups are getting something out of this conversation. And if you think about what the mayor is thinking about for TAD extension, all those groups are going to get significant investment. And so that's the superpower. That's what we share with other communities that come and visit the Beltline. That's why Robbie Hammond talked about the High Line as a missed opportunity, as a failure, because it didn't include all of those pieces there.
Hi, Clyde, Bruce Gunter. Well, first of all, my congratulations on a terrific presentation and a really wonderful stewardship, a nice tenure, and in particular, in recent years, your focus on affordable housing. I remember back in the day that wasn't a lot.
You remember,
And,
yeah.
and so I am going to ask you a question about affordable housing, but I also remember when Atlanta was known as the capital of sprawl. And now we are known as a city that's really connecting each other. And there's some, you've attracted a lot of Beltline royalty here. And Jim, one of the unsung heroes that helped the Beltline to be what it is. I also remember walking the Beltline when I was trying to help homeless folks get some housing. So it's come a long way. Well, here's my question about affordable housing. Beltline has been a spectacular proof of concept that when you put in really desirable public infrastructure, prices are going to go way up, land prices, rent, and everything else. We all know that. I think the question is, what are some of the lessons that you have learned if you could go back and redo it?
That is great, and Terry, I'm sure you're conjuring up thoughts in your mind. Brian, you are too. Without going into kind of a deep thesis, buy land, buy land, buy land, buy land. That's probably the thing that if we can go back and play Monday morning quarterback, is to buy land around the Beltline. And now we've done that over the last 6 years, and we've amassed an additional 100 acres of land, not for trail, but future development. And that's allowing us, Bruce, to do kind of that deep affordability. There are certain places where we're doing 30% of area median income from an affordability perspective. And what that means, gang, is about someone who makes $30,000, $28,000 a year. So for your restaurant workers and people that have to work 2 full-time jobs, that's the population that we're trying to serve there. But buy land. Yep.
Thank you. How many people remember when the Beltline was getting started? Every hand. Okay. How many of you all were against it when it was getting started?
Now, be honest. Come on,
dare
be
you.
honest.
I dare you.
Be honest.
Okay, I saw no hand go up, right? Okay. All right. I guess I won't ask how many of you have an issue with the concept of rail at the moment on the Beltline, but I feel like there were people who, you have an issue with it?
I have an issue with rail on the Beltline.
Okay. May I hear why?
I think it was visionary in 1999 to say we should put light rail on the Beltline. I just believe that today things have changed an awful lot. More and more options are being developed that we should be thinking about, testing, pursuing. And to me, the big opportunity, if we can figure out how to fund it, between MARTA, the Beltline, the city, is to really go after the 4 infill stations on the Beltline where the Beltline crosses over or under the heavy rail tracks. Then you are bringing transit to the Beltline, you're bringing the Beltline to transit, and then you can get creative about what you do in between those.
Okay, thank you for that. So that requires a different kind of working together, MARTA, to have working with the city, with the Beltline, et cetera, to get that done. So it will be interesting to see how this all works out. But Atlanta, I can guarantee you, will be better for whatever the decision is, however whatever the decision is made, Atlanta finds a way to make it work, and Atlanta will be better for it. So thank you all very much for being here today. Thank you, Keith. Thank you for bringing your father, Mr. Mason. Thank you for starting this whole thing. We appreciate you as well. So let's thank our guests for being here with us today. So next week, we have Kevin Greiner and Katie Saez, another group of Rotarians that will be our speakers next week. On the 13th, there is no meeting, and then on the 20th, it's about women's health, and that's the celebration of World Polio Day, or the eradication of World Polio. So thank you all for being here. We are adjourned.